Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to Film Nobs. I am Barry B-Man Benning. Glad to be here with you. Across from me, we have, as usual,
Steve Benning.
We have my co-host who can't remember their own names. And finally, am I going to have to prompt you?
No, but I'm not across from you, though.
That's true. He didn't quite take he didn't take my lead in there, did he? Just kind of, he wasn't listen again. Once again, Stephen didn't listen to me when I try to tell him. I'm constantly trying to tell him the truth, right? How things really are, and he always wants to debate those things.
Like
you are. Yes.
Like Die Hard being a Christmas movie.
Well, no, he's agreeing with me on that one. See, that time he's okay. So he's right that time.
I'm sorry, Sensei. I will pay attention.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I am the third co-host of Film Nobs. I am Richard Morgan, a.k.a. the Morganator.
Okay, guys.
We're off to a rocking start.
Man, this is... we are on fire already.
This is why they pay us good money.
Wait a minute. You're getting paid?
Aren't we?
Yeah,
Yes, we are. You know what? We're getting paid by doing something we love. We're getting paid in love.
we do it for the love of the frame.
I've heard that before. That's a really good... You know what?
Somebody should write that
make
down.
Somebody should make a show called For the Love of the Frame.
So what fun topic are we going to talk about today?
Well, all right. Here's my idea for today's show, guys.
I like it.
Yeah, whatever it is, we're in.
Okay, so while Stephen never agrees with me, the Morgan just automatically agrees. I like that. No, I was thinking the other night. All right, why do we do this, guys? Why do we put this show on and do our For the Love of the Frame? So why are we doing this?
I know why I do it.
Okay.
It's because I love just everything about movies. I love the way that you can watch something and it transports you to somewhere else. It can bring new ideas to you, explore opportunities. For example, so I won't go into the whole, what our favorite movies are, and we'll hold off on that for a second. But I can say this. My love of movies led me to a love of art. My love of movies led me to a love of music and soundtracks. So I love how that medium can just open doors to other places.
Wow, that's good. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I don't think I'm going to be as eloquent about it as you were. For some reason, I always had a love for the movies. I was lucky enough, my parents took me to the theater early on, and they were very patient. They must have sat through, I don't know how many really weak G-rated movies when I was a kid. But along with those, they also took me to see some very good movies. And for some reason, those movies took hold of my imagination. It made me, I don't know, not to be too corny, kind of made me step outside of myself as a kid and see the world as a bigger place with a lot of really interesting things in it.
Sounds very cinema paradiso.
Very much so. And so I was kind of thinking about this question to myself the other night, and I thought, well, I know the reason had to have come, certainly with me, early on in life. And so I thought I would pose this. What are some of the films, or maybe not even just films, but in our childhoods, why don't we talk about some of the things that fostered this love of film that I know we all have? I just know that I have to do these things, I guess. I don't know why.
It's in you.
It's in me. It's like when, someone, hey, why do you love doing that? Well, I just do. But I think there are certain movies that spurred this on for me. And I'd kind of like to talk about some of those things and have you guys discuss the same. Is that cool? Can we talk about some of the things early on maybe that...
Yeah. So was there a moment, like a particular moment or a movie that just says clicks when you think about, talking about all that just that's the movie you think about?
For me personally, there are two movies, I guess. I want to say, if you're talking more about the movies as movies, that moment there where I was watching something and I go, this is bigger. Something about this isn't just a movie. There's something pulling me. That movie would actually have to be 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think I was like I was about 7 or 8 years old when my parents took me to see. I was living in Alabama, and they took me. There was a theater that showed revivals, basically. They showed Gone with the Wind, movies like that, and they took me to see that movie. And I can remember, I don't know, I was like hypnotized watching that film. I was just absolutely hypnotized. I know my mom told me, it's like, I don't even think you blinked during the whole movie. And my parents, like a lot of people, they really couldn't make heads or tails out of it and didn't care for it. But I, on the other hand, was, like I say, mesmerized. So I think that's the movie that kind of, I knew there was something else there, something else about movies for me than maybe for other people.
What, that it touched like an emotion, or was it something creative about it?
Well, I think it was. That's a good way to frame that. Thank you. I think it was the creative side of it. I wanted to know. But first, while I was watching it, I was completely drawn into what I was seeing. It was like I wasn't in a theater. I was there. Right. Thank you. Stanley Kubrick and all the people that worked on that so tirelessly, because it just seemed real. But after the movie, I got to thinking, how did they do that? Now, you said, was it emotional or, was it creative or emotionally? There is a movie that I can also draw on. And it was probably a year or two before that. I might have been 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old. I was at home, and my mom and I watched The Wizard of Oz. And I remember transported away. And at the end of the movie, everything, this is, I almost hesitate to say this, because this is a pretty private, a pretty personal moment. So we were watching this, and I remember, all right, everything turns out pretty good, right? No spoiler alert there, really. And I started crying. I was crying. I had tears in my eyes. Could not, and that baffled me. I'm sitting there, and I couldn't figure out why I had tears coming out of my eyes, yet it was a happy ending. And I asked my mom, I said, why am I crying? And she was like, well, those are happy tears. And to this day, I swear to God, I'm still kind of, I think about that, and I still kind of tear up. It was an emotional, moment for me. And I will fully admit right now, I'm one of those guys. I remember I was watching, oh, good land, La La Land, right? And into the movie, I'm somebody that if it gets me, but I've still got that male, macho male thing. I don't want anybody to see that, right? There's no way. And I'll be damned if they didn't turn on the light. So I'm sitting there, and I've got that, there's a way you can kind of put your fingers up to your eyes, like you're studying or thinking or concentrating. I've got my fingers up, trying to get that tear out, right? And the lights come on. They turn the lights on, and they're, I'm watching this movie with my wife, and I'm crying. and now everybody else can see me. I'm like, oh gosh. Anyway.
But that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. That's a good thing.
It's a good thing, but yet, you can't get that, we're ingrained with, there's a certain way, guys, that you've got to be. And you're right. It is a good thing. But I still, I still kind of, dude, I can let out a tear on a movie that you might not, pretty easily. I'm so affected by movies that, there'll be some probably that would be surprising that I'm sitting there going, oh.
So, Rick, was there a moment that encapsulates
The
everything?
beginning.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, my dad was in the Air Force, so we moved around a lot. We lived on the air base. He was in the Air Force. So the movies that I saw growing up, I don't think necessarily were released in the same year at the theater that I saw them in on base, that they were theatrically released. And they may have been 6 months or a year or two apart. But the two that I remember was Star Wars A New Hope and Close Encounters, which kind of find out they were released in the same year. So, like I said earlier, I blame George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. And then in the 80s, it became James Cameron, Terminator, Alien,
So
Aliens, Ridley Scott for Alien.
Was there anything, I mean, have you thought, what in particular, I mean, those are both, great movies. Is there anything in particular you think that...
Well, I don't know exactly why, but like with Star Wars, for the longest time, every time I saw the 20th Century Fox, moniker come up, I thought that was going to be a Star Wars movie, and I was always disappointed that it was another movie besides Star Wars.
You thought every movie was going to
Right. I thought that was the only movie that that they made, I guess.
So 20th Century Fox is basically teasing you,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Well, I mean, they're both... All right, so they're both science fiction movies. One outside of this Earth, one, set on it.
Right.
Kids kind of dig, stuff like that. Do you think, did it appeal to, your...
It just gave me a sense of something else bigger than myself, And Star Wars made an emotional connection with me as a kid, and I guess I identified with Luke Skywalker, like probably most of us did growing up.
Right.
To the point where I even had all the Star Wars action figures growing up. And
do you still have those, by the way?
no, I sold them in a garage sale.
About like me and my comic books, right? Yes.
For the record, I still have my Star Wars figures.
Oh, but they're probably opened, right?
They are open, but most of them are in excellent condition.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, I've got to ask, was there one over the Star Wars over Close Encounters, or are they pretty much on an even?
In terms of
your enjoyment of them?
probably Star Wars.
Now, I've got to ask you because, later on, I'm sure we'll mention a few more besides it. Star Wars certainly a big effect on me as well. How old were you when in 77?
3.
And you probably saw them, like I said,
Maybe a year or two
a
later.
year or two later. So yeah, you might have been about 79 or 80.
Yeah.
For you. What about you over there, buddy boy? I see this grin on your face. What movies affected you?
Okay, so the very first thing I can remember about going to a movie theater was going to see Pink Panther movies.
Wow,
Yeah,
really?
yeah. I remember us going to see the Pink Panther movies.
Do you remember, like, you say movies, like the...
Yeah, it's funny. I couldn't tell you which one, or I just remember going and seeing the Pink Panther.
Was it the music you think drew you in?
As far as the...
all of them have the Pink
Yeah.
Panther theme.
and pretty cool animated openings as well.
Yeah, it was you go there with your family, and my mom and dad love those movies, and it was just a family thing for us. And then after that, of course, there's the Star Wars thing. All of us in that generation grew up with Star Wars. And that movie had a big effect on me because that's where, talking about the soundtracks, I really started paying attention to music a lot more. And so I'd have these toys, I'd have the soundtrack, I'd have my colors, and my little pencils, and I would draw like little storyboards and draw out characters.
Nice.
And then I remember sitting back envisioning scenes the way I would shoot them myself, with the music, shoot them differently. So that was really the first time I thought, man, there's a creative aspect that you could explore even though you've seen the movie already. You could do your own thing with it in your imagination with music and different things.
I got to ask you, do you still have any of those? I mean,
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you ever go back and just, do you ever go back and look at them?
I have.
No, I bet that's pretty good. Because I kind of did something similar. I don't think I went to the extent that you did, but it would be great to go back and.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The other movie came out the same year. It's the first movie that I quote unquote saw by myself, even though I didn't see it by myself because I was 7.
Wait, hold on.
It was the illusion that I was.
So no, were they outside or inside the theater?
I know they're in the back of the theater somewhere.
Okay.
But it was The Rescuers. You remember the movie, the animated movie, The Rescuers?
Vaguely. It was a Disney movie.
It was one of these things that was like, it was kind of a mystery, but it had some dark moments. And I was like, hey, cartoons can be kind of dark. And I was a fan of Scooby-Doo, that kind of. So The Rescuers, but then fast forward a little bit, the movie that made me say, I want to really be somebody else. I mean, there's always that moment, I want to be this guy. Yeah, Luke Skywalker, Star Wars. But the movie was Raiders Lost Ark. That's the movie.
Indy.
That's the movie I said, boy, I want to be like Indiana Jones. And
So you blame Lucas and Spielberg as well.
Lucas and Spielberg, those movies are the ones that when I look back during that period that I think about the most.
Now we're talking about 77, right? So 77 for Star Wars and
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters, Star Wars, and you said The Rescuers also 77.
Yes, 77.
So 77, a big year, certainly. I know that you mentioned family, right? Mm-hmm. That's part of going to see. Both of you mentioned seeing these movies with families. That was a big part of the movies that made an impact with me as well. A kind of a familial feeling, and not just family with friends. I remember, my parents. My mom especially, my dad worked off quite a bit. So my mom had the task of taking me, and then I would have a lot of friends. A lot of my friends, we would go and be like, 5 or 6 or more of us, go see a movie. I know that we certainly, Stephen, we, went to see a few movies together back in the day. But it reminds me of my really good memories, close, again, memories of family and friends. Superman was another one of those movies. Mm-hmm. I think that was 78 maybe.
I think. Yeah.
A year later, but I can remember.
I think, did we see it together?
I believe we did. With our friend in Virginia, Mad Mark.
Mad
Mark was there with us. I know because we were talking about that the other night. And we saw it on a big, 150 screen, a curved screen. That was a big deal back then.
That was a huge deal.
It was.
I missed the heck out of that theater. That's where I saw Raiders. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I believe that's probably where I saw Raiders, or we may have actually seen that together. I don't know. But for some reason, I remember, everybody packing in and seeing Superman. And then Star Wars was the same way. It was just a bunch of friends. My mom, somehow, God bless her, somehow managed to. And the funny, I don't remember. It's like we were watching the movies back then. We weren't. There wasn't a lot of extracurricular thing. We were sitting in our seats and pretty much
Well, I remember going in, talking about Raiders and seeing the poster, they always had the poster off to the side at the 150, and seeing that poster, I thought, oh man, this looks like it's so cool. And then you could look around and see people, like you said, there was no cell phones, there wasn't all this stuff to distract you. Everybody's just anxious to get their popcorn, get their drink, get a good seat because they didn't have allocated seating, and it was just a rush to get into the theater. And then sometimes the movie hadn't quite let go for whatever reason. Remember, they'd hold the crowd back.
Oh, yeah.
Or,
I'd forgotten about that.
It's running late for whatever reason, and they haven't quite cleaned it up, and everybody's milling around the doors. Just there's like this nervous excitement to go see.
Wow.
And it was like an event.
I guess for us, we weren't big city folk.
It was a real event.
Little Rock, Arkansas. Yeah. And so this was our Broadway ticket, basically, our Broadway show here.
You'd open up the newspaper, and to be like almost like a full page ad, with just nothing but this movie poster on it. You're like, that movie must be awesome.
A big. I want to see that.
I want to see that.
Well, now, Mad Mark mentioned to me. I don't know if you remember this or not. I had forgotten, but once he told me, I did remember. Remember that it was the Superman premiere. This was such news back then to Central Arkansas at the time. That there was actually a news crew, reporter, at least a reporter and a cameraman outside the theater getting interviews from people who had just seen the movie and actually asked me something. They asked me, I don't know if you remember that or not, but yeah. So yeah, that was a
Do you remember the question that
it's
they
a
asked?
big deal. No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I was probably too petrified at that time. I probably just had big saucer eyes, probably kind of like I do now, except I was maybe hopefully I'm a little bit more literate.
Pretty much movie good, me excited.
Yeah, love movie, Superman, fly.
Popcorn tasty.
So now you, Rick, you bebopped around a little bit, right? You moved from, were you moving from place to place to?
Fairly often. Movies became a family thing, It's like as soon as I made friends at one location, it was time to move.
But those movies,
right,
were always with you,
right?
Do you associate movies with friends? You're like, hey, I had this friend with this movie.
No, I don't.
Yeah, too young probably. It's funny, talking about different, you was because you moved around so much, not necessarily seeing the movie in a theater, but yet you have recollections of, like talking about the Universal horror films, watching those old movies on TV.
Oh yeah, Friday nights.
It was the only chance. It was the only way we could ever experience those because that's how I caught up on classic movies, and which that love of Universal horror films made my poor mom bought all these like famous monster magazines for me because I became infatuated with reading about werewolves and Dracula and everything else. Alien back in the day.
Funny, I've never thought about that. You're right though. That was at that time. I mean, their video wasn't, it was just kind of nascent.
No,
starting out.
It was like, hey, this movie is on TV. Really?
Right.
It's like I remember back in the day, ABC would show like a lot of James Bond movies. Right. Of course, they'd be the edited versions,
right,
so I could watch those. But I was like, I get to watch James Bond. This came out in the theater. I get to see it now. That's pretty cool. So I get to catch up on all these awesome movies. I just thought it was so neat,
Oh,
but back then it was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can remember, my mom finally, or not finally, this was pretty early on, especially where we were. She got like HBO and Cinemax, and oh my goodness. Then it really started taking off for me. I think, it's funny. I hadn't thought about it until right now, but that's when I spent entirely too much time probably inside, watching movies.
But okay, this is gonna kind of follow me around the room with this one. That feeling of going to see, being 7 years old, going to see a movie for the first time, or that experience. Don't you want that back? I mean, in some ways, the availability of movies kind of takes something away from that. Is it just me? I miss that. I miss that feeling.
Well, yeah, it's
hard. It's new. It's something exciting.
It's like like any addict. We're movie addicts, like any addict, always chasing that first high, right?
It's like if you miss it hey, I missed that in the theater. And I'll watch it on Netflix or Amazon, or I'll catch it on.
So did you guys have like an awe and mystique about movies?
Yeah, that's exactly what I miss. I miss that awe and mystique. And
okay, so as we've gotten older, do you think we've lost it because we are more interested in the construction of movies?
I think it's a fair point.
That's a good point, right? Some of that is missing because now we're not seeing the forest for the trees.
How it works.
We're too busy. Yeah. Well, how exactly did they do that? Instead of just letting a movie like we were when we were kids just wash over, just be. That movie is just washing over you.
But that's one of the reasons why, and I do catch some flack about that. That's why I don't watch a lot of trailers because I'm always trying to recapture that moment. Because, yeah, you know how they work and all this stuff. So I'm always trying to capture, if I think there's a movie that may give me a hint of that experience, like Avengers, Endgame coming up next year. That's what I want. I want that moment to where, like, I don't know what to expect about this movie. I want it to feel new. I want to feel like a kid again. I want to feel like I'm 7. That's the reason I don't really watch a lot of trailers.
The problem is, though, back when we were kids, it was easy to, escape. Now we're inundated with media 24/7 in so many different ways. And we now know so much about a movie before it comes out. Sometimes even when you do try to hide, you can't really hide.
Yeah, there are times I'll watch trailers because I'm like, look, I've already seen so much of this thing, just bits and pieces. I know if the trailer is 2 minutes and 10 seconds or whatever it is, I've seen a minute and a half.
Right.
I know how this is going to go. But
well, let me ask you. Now that we've got other things that we've got to worry about, other responsibilities. When you're a kid, you really don't have that many responsibilities. So now the problem is, it's like, do I really want to watch that
because there's
movie?
So much
do I
to
want to
choose
spend time with this movie?
Yeah, there's just so much to choose from now.
Right.
It makes you more
Plus,
picky. I'll sit
absolutely.
there on Amazon. I've got a list of 50 movies, whatever it is.
In your queue?
50, yeah, in my queue. I've got like 50 movies. And I'll sit there, I'm not exaggerating one bit, I'll sit there for 30 minutes trying to find another movie when I've got 50 movies right there that, quote unquote, I want to watch.
Because you think that one might speak to you more?
Yeah, because I'm always looking for the one that's going to speak to me more.
Well, at that particular... What mood am I in tonight to what, right? That kind of thing. And guess what, though? How many times does this happen to you? You say 30 minutes. Well, I know sometimes it goes longer with 30 minutes for me when I'm doing it. And then I end up, look at the time, oh my gosh, I got to go to bed.
I got to go to bed.
And you end up not watching anything.
This happened to me the other night. It's 10 o'clock. I'm going to watch a movie. I was tired anyway. And literally, I didn't even realize what time it was, talking about the 30-minute thing.
Yeah.
It's like 11 o'clock. And the movie I picked out was like 2 hours and 15 minutes long. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to watch that. So I remembered I hadn't finished watching Dreamscape. I'd never seen Dreamscape. So I finished watching it. I had like 40 minutes left of that. But yeah, it's this whole conundrum of like, there's almost too much. There's almost too much to watch.
There's so much content now because, look, I'm a believer this is kind of the golden age of television. There's so much good content out there. And that takes up a lot of time as well. There's just only so many, so many hours in a day.
So we've gone to talk about like decades. Looking back on the 80s, is there an 80s movie that you guys kind of think of like, hey, we talked about Raiders of the Lost Ark, but is there like that one 80s movie that kind of sums it up? I'll go ahead and tell you mine. When I think about the 80s and a movie that really kind of influenced...
We may have the same one here.
It kind of influenced my youth a little bit. And I'm talking about in a different way, kind of the corny kind of way. Top Gun.
No, we're not thinking
right. Yeah, I'm talking about like just movies, just kind of just for whatever reason, the way you dress, the way you talk, kind of the Valley. Remember the Valley Girl thing? Yeah. So Top Gun, you had the cool shades, the aviators, the leather jacket.
That movie's huge.
That soundtrack,
huge. So Top Gun, your go-to 80s movie.
Yeah, Top Gun is definitely my go-to. I still listen to that soundtrack. It takes my breath away.
Now, look, I'm not as big a fan of the movie as you are, but that soundtrack, like the movie itself, I can't remember how many, top 10 hits or number one hits that spawned. There were several.
I know a lot of dudes probably serenaded some of their dates to.
Well, what'd you have? You had Kenny Loggins. What? Yeah. You had Berlin.
You never.
I don't. Come on, you want to do it.
Yeah, I do so badly.
Yeah, here it is. Here's your chance.
I'll spare you guys. Rick, you got anything? You got a movie like that?
From the 80s, I've got several.
What is it? There's got to be that one above others.
Dressed
all
like
others.
You had the soundtrack.
Right. That you kind of went in
emulated.
I'll give you an example, okay, but not a movie example. I always felt like that this is the one time that I fell in with a crowd that I'm kind of feel guilty about. You know, I think, because I always want to be that individual a lot of times. Kiss. I was, you know, everyone loved Kiss
Right.
when I was growing up. And they had bought all the records. And I really, you know, they were kind of, but I bought in on it. I wanted to be, you know, I didn't want to be different from all my friends. So, Kiss.
You just had to fit. You just wanted to fit in.
I just wanted to fit in. That's the one time that I couldn't stand up for my principles of individualism.
Who is going on tour for the last time? As a little.
Well,
aside?
you know what? That's what they said the last time.
That's right. The last.
It's
the
a
last
final-
one
Because
time.
I did. Yeah, as much as I said that's. I fell into the crowd with Kiss, right? Well, once again, I fell into the crowd with Kiss. I saw them on that last tour. My wife, she likes Kiss. So once again.
You like Kiss too?
So, hey, that's a good idea, honey.
So what movie was it that?
Yeah, I'm off on Kiss. What's the
from
one?
the 80s? So I have to pick one.
Yep.
One quintessential movie.
That kind of.
That influence that you emulated, that, you know, hey, I got to have the shades like they do, or the jacket, or the pants.
I was never quite in that vein.
So you were a more rugged individualist than I was then. I caved in. I eventually caved in. You didn't cave in.
No, but see, remember though, I'm an only child as well, I didn't. We moved around a lot, so I have a lot of friends. So I really didn't cave to peer pressure too much.
Right.
If
I guess there wasn't a steady. There was a steady group of peers there
No.
for you. So, but all right. So
You said you had several movies. So,
right. So
what-
what was the kind of the movie that you think represents that time for you then?
The early '80s is probably Tron.
Tron. Whoa, that is. Okay, I wouldn't have got that one.
In the '80s, that's when the video games first came out.
Yes. Well, yeah, popularized. Yeah.
Popularized. I mean, I guess Pong came out in the late '70s, but
Yeah, the quarters became. Yeah.
the arcade.
Yeah.
So something meshed with me there that combined my two favorite topics at the time, movies and video games. So, you know, Tron, of course, came out with a Tron video game, which I thought was really cool.
The special effects at that time were, they were new. They were different than what, we'd seen before. It was a pretty cool looking movie.
And so, like with Star Wars, you have the other world that is like outer space, Close Encounters, outer space. But Tron was an artificial world. So you went inward into the video game and got to play experience the video game movie as though you were actually in the video game. Fast forward, late 90s, The Matrix. Now, late 80s, I'm torn between Die Hard and Batman.
Did you run around like in the muscle shirt?
No.
That mysteriously gets dirty for no reason during the day. You just look down, hey, my shirt's dirty. Never happened to you?
No.
Okay. So which one, if you had to pick one?
Yeah, we're gonna make you. We're gonna make you pick one of
You're going to pin me down.
I'm going to pin you down.
Die Hard, which is a Christmas movie.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, no, we'll save it. We'll save that for another. This is an argument for another day. Basically Christmas Day, maybe.
Tease.
Shameless plug.
Yes.
It's our show, so we can
Indeed,
plug it.
That's right. We can.
Okay, so why Die Hard? Because I thought you had gone Batman, to be honest with you.
I could have just as easily gone with Batman.
So like different day, different.
Right.
Is it one of those?
Is it because we've been talking about Die Hard, you think, maybe? But so what was it about Die Hard that...
It was just such a huge movie. I'm a special effects geek. I love special effects. I love action.
Well, you tend to, the technical. Well, Tron certainly very technical. Very technical movie.
Anything that blows up, anything,
You're there.
I'm
You're
there.
Did you, when you were watching the movie, be honest, were you thinking, I could be John McClane? I mean, be honest.
With shoes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Now, by my calculations, you would have been about 14 or so when Die Hard came out in '88. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, B-Man?
Well, the movie I think of, as far as, I don't know if I email it, although, well, I eventually got me a pair of Ray-Bans. I'm going to have to go with a different Tom Cruise movie, a couple of years earlier than that, Risky Business. That's probably the movie.
Risky, another Tom. Wow.
Another Tom. Well, Tom Cruise, yeah.
He was on fire.
He was on fire for a while. But that movie, I don't know. One thing is, my mom, and I actually think this is a good thing. A lot of people will go, you shouldn't do that. To a degree. But my mom was very particular about what movies she would take, like the ratings. You know, if it was too adult. Now, I'm trying to think, well, what was Risky Business? 83?
Somewhere,
yeah. So I'm a little older, I'm a little older by that point.
You saw Risky Business
I
with
did.
your
I
mom.
saw that with my mom. And
Okay, how awkward was that?
well, it was. It's
Did
funny.
she have any idea? Did she have any idea?
That's a good question. I don't know. I remember this though. I remember. Remember the mom in the movie was kind of, she was a bit very strict, uptight,
Yeah,
and
uptight.
And the Cruise character in that, he was not, And I remember at the end of the movie, I think I said something out loud about, about that character, and I can remember her getting mad about that. It was like, I think we were in the theater, and I just remember her just like turning to me and looking at me and just shooting daggers, So yeah, that did get a.
Yeah, it's like going to see Fatal Attraction with a date. It's not a good idea.
Don't
go see Risky Business with your mother.
Not a good, but but we would see. My mom and I saw a lot. I mean, even when I was past the age of her taking me to movies, we would still go to movies together, quite a bit because it was
fun.
It was a
the
bonding
family,
thing.
the family.
And I can remember going to, and I was very young at this time. There were 3 movies, and they're somewhere around 1979, 1980. And for some reason, I can remember these 3 movies as being kind of a very big turning point for me, as far as I was very young, but these movies were adult movies, with adult themes. I didn't really understand everything that was being said in them, but for some reason, they still had some kind of hold on me. I can remember the movie Breaker Morant, the Australian movie, Bruce Beresford movie, My Dinner with Andre, and The Ninth Configuration, which at the time, you know that one, right? Yeah. And she took me to see the Ninth Configuration. Was probably even more,
I haven't seen Andre yet, but yeah, I've seen Ninth Configuration.
And back then, when we saw it in the market that we were in, I believe it was titled. The retitle, it was called Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane at that time.
Who thought that was a good idea? I don't know.
Right. We now know it as the Ninth Configuration. But that was written and directed by William Peter. I think it's Blatty. Yeah, the guy who did The Exorcist, wrote The Exorcist.
I forgot he directed that.
Yeah, and so I could, for some reason, those 3 movies, and she broke, she finally, I guess, realized I was getting a little older. So she let me go to these R-rated, she took me to these R-rated movies. And those 3 movies in particular, it seems like, were a step between the fun movies, like, as a kid, Superman and Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was a big step in my movie maturation.
Yeah. You never know when it happens, like, one day you're in there watching Star Wars, and you got, like, back in the day, you had the popcorn boxes, and you put them, like, over your wrist, and you, like, use them, like, as phasers, like Iron Man would do, going.
That was last week, right?
Yeah, that's what I did it last week.
He's done a lot of growing.
I've come a long way. And then the next thing you know, you're in there watching Risky Business.
Well,
with your mom.
well, yeah, with my mom. Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
I've got to ask. I mean, you asked me about the whole Righteous Brothers thing, singing that song, and yes, that I did do that. But did you ever do the underwear thing? Did you ever? Did you ever do the slide?
oh, I'm sure I did. Let's put it this way.
Because you had hardwood floors in the
Right,
house.
I did. I can't honestly. I wish I could honestly say, man, I remember. I'm going to say there's a real good chance that I did. Well, look, wait a minute, hold on. What am I talking about? I did that. I do that as an adult sometimes. Kind of like last week, I probably did that at some point.
So, okay, so you've done some acting. Now, when did you make the transition from watching movies to wanting to act in them?
Oh, well, I've had to make my own. For some reason, Hollywood did not come calling to me as an actor. I don't know why.
As well, 99.8% of the population.
Were you in school plays growing up?
No, I didn't do.
How
one,
were you not in school plays?
I didn't do one.
Because I figure you just like jumped all over that.
I was a bit of a. That's funny. In some ways, I was a bit of a loner, but I don't know. I just never.
So
The first film, I had to make. I had to make my own. So if either of you guys were to go like on YouTube now, you type in the Understudies films, you're gonna see my short films.
So is the Understudies your first acting experience?
No. I a little bit off topic, but my first acting experience was actually in a play, and it was Waiting for Godot. Of all the plays that I could have chosen to be my first
As an
stage,
adult, though, right?
As an adult, well, as any for anything.
So you didn't act at all?
I was in Waiting for Godot, which is a 3-hour, pretty tough show to go through.
So you didn't do any acting as a kid in school plays?
Nope.
Or...
Nope.
Huh.
Never did. I preferred. I watched the big screen. I didn't participate.
Do you guys have like any desert island movies?
Well, back from like they have to be from something from our childhood, right? Is that?
Yeah, it might be anything. I mean, but I mean, if you went back to your childhood, what would it be? Or young adult, teenager?
Well, it's funny. It's not a child. Well, it's one of those. It's actually on, my list for. I was a teenager when I saw this. This is my favorite movie. This is my favorite movie of all time. I'm not saying it's the best movie of all time, but it's my favorite. The Long Goodbye. Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye would be my desert island movie.
Did you see that in the theater?
No, I saw it on I imagine that was probably on Cinemax or something like that. Some pay-per-view at the time.
Is there another one maybe that kind of sneaks in there? Like, man, this reminds me of something in my lifetime. This had an influence on me, and I'm going to be stuck on this island for however long I live now.
Well, all right, look, to me, like, if you're saying that, I would want to laugh. If I'm by myself on an island, and all I've got is maybe some kind of sporting goods equipment.
This movie reminds me of something that I want to keep. Like that fire, like that campfire, just trying to go out.
That's an interesting way to put that. I don't know, maybe Animal House or Caddyshack, something like that.
So this is the only movie that we have.
Well, you take a few. You take a few.
Aliens would probably be on my list.
Nice.
So this is kind of the same vein as being a desert, island movie. Is there a movie any movie that, if it comes on TV, no matter where it is in the movie, you will sit down and finish out watching the movie?
Exactly what I just said earlier. Animal House, Fletch, Caddyshack, that type of comedy that you really don't, that's just really just gags and whatnot. I'm a sucker. I've seen those movies countless times.
Yeah, I've got a few of those. Aliens is one of those. Talking about, that link between family and movies and that connection. I remember I told my mom, I turned on Aliens and she was watching it. I said, "Mom, this movie, she reminds me of you."
Ripley.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned that character as being in the first movie.
Yeah.
As being
So
kind of.
I always associate Ripley with my mom because there's so many things, especially when she was younger. There's so many things about that character. No joke, she was Ripley. Yeah, I'm not making it up.
Well, yeah. Well, your mom was she's not a small woman. She, Well, as a matter of fact,
And she even had the hair.
I watched his mom beat up my dad. I'm not kidding you. They would get wrestled. Well, I'm not in a fight, although it got close. But she could wrestle you down to the ground.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, yeah. So you're talking about aliens. It always reminds me of my mom. But it's funny how you make those connections in film. That you don't really see coming. And talking about film, that's why it's always. I think that's why we keep going back. Because we're always looking for that unexpected connection. You sit down and watch a movie about outer space and Marines fighting aliens, and then you make this weird connection about she reminds me of my mother in a cool way. Or you watch some movie and has a character, it's like that character reminds me of a friend back in school that I love dearly, and it's not with us anymore. You start making all these connections that
Well, let me ask
completely
you,
unexpected.
Had you made that connection before? I mean, have you had that in your mind for a while, or is this something that recently?
No, even way back.
Even
then.
way back?
Yeah, way back then. And I think that's one reason I fell in love with that movie so much. You start making these more emotional connections to films.
Well, Rick, is there? I mean, that's a very interesting point. Is there anything like that
That reminds me of a connection with somebody.
Right. Either with a person or maybe with a place.
Not that I can think of offhand. Because again, we moved around a lot.
That's
so
true. That's right. You didn't have any
roots.
Concrete places, certainly.
I mean, we didn't settle until my dad retired.
It's, you're talking about that. There's comedies and stuff. I'm not the biggest comedy watcher. Not that I have anything against comedies, but I just don't watch a lot of them. But there is one comedy that I absolutely love, and it would be a desert island movie, and it's Wayne's World. You're talking about the movie that you watch over and over again if it comes on. I'm sitting on Wayne's World is that movie.
Well, that's certainly in the vein. It's funny. It's in the vein of the movies that I mentioned earlier. Silly, silly comedy, broad comedy.
But part of that is because I remember, Bohemian Rhapsody. I didn't care for the song Bohemian Rhapsody. I just didn't. I loved Queen. I loved some of the other Queen stuff. But Bohemian Rhapsody, I just didn't get that song. And of course, there's a famous scene in Wayne's World where they're, doing the headbanging and they're cranking it. So that song comes on the radio because it kind of, got the revival back. That song comes on the radio, and a group of friends and I, we're going to float the river, North Ark, So floating the river, song comes on, and we all start doing the thing, the headbanging, just like they do in the movie. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And I started loving that song. And still to this day, that song comes on, I'm cranking it, and I'm doing the headbanging thing. But I think, truthfully, it isn't 2018. I'm still back there like 1991. Right. You know what I mean?
It transports you back.
Yeah. I'm reliving that moment more than anything else. I'm making those associations with that movie, with that song. All of that ties all these years later. That's, when you can make those kind of connections with film, when you're trying to, I think as a creator, that's what if somebody ever walked up to me, if I ever created anything, made a movie, and they said, look, I made this kind of personal connection with this film, I think that would be the most incredible compliment ever,
Yeah, well, like I say, that kind of brings us back in a way full circle to going back, and now trying to find that same sense of wonder and awe that we all experienced when we were younger. I mean, we kind of all do want to go back and get that, and it's a lot harder, I think, now than it was.
I think for me, it's a little bit different, and maybe you guys can piggyback on it. I want to be a filmmaker. So it's like switching the gears from being, a fan of film or, viewer of film like we were growing up. It's like now we can shift gears and start being filmmakers. And like you just said, Steve, about we want people to connect with, whatever we make. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of an interesting new perspective on things, that seeing how filmmakers back then connected with us through their films,
Now you want to return the favor.
Yeah.
Take that same torch and run with it.
Well, you're a man of many talents. We both know that. So hopefully I can help you out some way. Maybe you can get me a bit part, something. Maybe a walk on or
Get that acting bug. Keep that acting bug going.
Exactly. Well, I tell you what. We hope that everyone out there has connected a little bit with what we've been talking. I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've enjoyed this episode quite a bit. It's brought back some really good memories, and we look forward to making some new memories.
Pleasure as always to do this, man. I really enjoy getting together and doing this.
Rick, why don't you? I tell you what. I know what I want to do. Something else I want to do is I want to hear some of what we've been talking about from you guys out there listening to us. So, how could they do that, Rick? How can?
Well, there's several ways, but they can hit us up on Twitter at Film Nobs. They can also go to our YouTube channel. Just do a search for Film Nobs. Drop us comments.
All right. Well, however you can get a hold of us, please do, because I love talking to people about this kind of thing, what their favorite movie moments are, favorite movies and memories from them, and we would certainly love to hear from you. And as always, thank you so much again, and until next time, take care.